It started as a joke. My cousin and I hadn't seen each other in a while, so we decided to hang out, just the two of us. We grabbed a bottle of Hennessy, smoked some weed, and spent the night reminiscing about old times. For once, I was able to let loose and forget about the problems waiting for me at home, the failing relationship, the tension, and the feeling of being stuck. We were laughing and catching up when her man called from jail. She took the call and the mood shifted. She focused on him, and I entertained myself while they talked. "Who you with?" he asked her at one point. "I'm with my cousin Dee," she replied. I knew of him but had never met him. As they talked, I don't know what made me say it, but I jokingly told her to ask him, "Where are your friends at?" It was meant to be funny. I wasn't serious. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was in a relationship, even if it wasn't going well. To my surprise, he actually passed the phone to someone. "Yo, this is P," a voice said. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. Then my curiosity took over. The first question I asked was, "Why are you in jail?" He answered honestly, but I was too busy cracking jokes and talking trash to take him seriously. By the end of the call, he asked for my number. I wasn't thinking much of it, so I gave him my burner number and handed the phone back to my cousin. "It's nothing serious," I told her. "It's just a joke." I thought that would be the end of it. At the time, I was trying to work on my relationship, but it felt like I was the only one trying. My man was sneaky, constantly talking to other women behind my back, and every argument left me feeling more drained. We shared an apartment, but it didn't feel like home. One morning, we were sitting at the kitchen table after a family party, reminiscing about the day, when my phone rang. The number wasn't saved in my phone. "Hello," I answered. "Hi, is this Dee?" a woman's voice asked. "Yeah, this is she," I said, confused. "Hold on, I have P on the line." My heart sank. I had been ignoring his calls, trying to keep my distance and stay focused on my situation at home. And now he was calling me through someone else. "What's up?" he said when he got on the line. I glanced at my man, who was watching me closely. I kept my tone short and calm. "I can't talk right now," I said quickly and hung up. I thought that would be the last time I heard from him, but it wasn't. Not long after, my man and I had another fight. He was lying to me again, and I couldn't take it anymore. Furious, I got in my car and drove aimlessly around the neighborhood. My phone rang, and this time it was P. I didn't want to answer, but something made me pick up. I let him hear it all, the anger, the betrayal, the exhaustion. He listened without interrupting, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone understood me. The phone calls became more frequent after that. At first, I told myself it was nothing serious. It was just someone to talk to and escape. But deep down, I knew I was checked out of my relationship. I didn't want to be there anymore, but leaving wasn't so simple. About a month into talking to P, I didn't hear from him one day. It was strange because he always called, like clockwork. At first, I brushed it off, but as the day went on, I couldn't help but wonder what was going on. That night, a call came from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered. "It's me, P," he said. "I'm out. Come see me." I froze. I wasn't expecting him to get out of jail so soon, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. But curiosity got the better of me. I got myself together and drove to the address he gave me. I wasn't sure what to think. Part of me was curious, but another part of me was nervous. I had heard stories about guys from jail, how they could be con artists, saying anything to get a woman's attention. But something about P made me want to give him a chance, if only to see if he was really who he said he was. When I pulled up to his house, I was shocked. The neighborhood was beautiful, with clean streets and big houses. The house he came out of was practically a mini mansion. I had been skeptical about everything he'd told me, his business, his lifestyle, but seeing it with my own eyes made me reconsider. Maybe he was telling the truth. He got in my car and we spent hours talking. By the time I got home, it was 3 a.m. After that night, we started seeing each other more often. I moved out of my apartment and ended my relationship, but I wasn't ready to jump into something new. I told P that I needed time, and he said he understood. But he wanted more. One night, While we were hanging out at his house, he asked if we could be together. I told him no. I wasn't ready. That's when I saw a side of him I hadn't seen before. He got upset, angrier than I expected. His phone started blowing up, notifications flashing on the screen. When I asked who it was, he brushed it off, saying it was just a girl who had done his hair. I let it go, but something about it didn't sit right with me. Thanksgiving was supposed to be a peaceful day. I had spent it with my family, eating, laughing, and trying to enjoy myself. After the festivities, I went home to relax and wind down. That's when P called. "I need you to come get me," he said, his voice frantic. "What's going on?" I asked, instantly on edge. "I just need you to come," he insisted. I was hesitant, but I agreed. It wasn't the first time he'd called me in a moment of chaos, and I figured he needed my help. When I got to the location, his homies and his mom were already there, standing around. I was pissed. If they were already there, why did I need to come? Feeling like I'd been dragged into something I had no business in, I started to leave. As I drove off, my phone started blowing up. "Oh, so you don't care about me?" he yelled when I answered. "You're really just gonna leave me here like this?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. At least I came. I didn't know him anything, yet he was acting like I had abandoned him. Annoyed but feeling guilty, I turned the car around and went back. When I pulled back up, he was still acting wild, pacing and yelling about his car and how it was damaged. He stormed over to my car and tossed his phones and a few other items onto my front seat. I didn't think much of it until I glanced at one of the phones and saw a notification pop up. It was a message from a girl on Facebook. I tried to ignore it, but then I saw the message that set me off. "Bae, I need you." I saw red. "Bae? Who the fuck is Bae?" I yelled as I got out of the car and charged at him. "You're calling some other girl while I'm sitting right here trying to help you?" He looked stunned, but before he could respond, I pulled out my pepper spray and sprayed him in the face. The crazy part? It didn't faze him. He barely flinched, like it didn't even burn. That's when I realized I needed to be smart. I ran back to my car and locked the doors before he could stop me. You'd think I would have driven off, but no. I grabbed some dish soap from the passenger seat and sprayed him with that too, just to make a point. Then I sped off. I was fuming as I drove around the block, my mind racing. Who did he think he was, playing with me like that? Underneath the anger, the weed and the pill were kicking in, making me feel even more reckless. I circled back to where his car was parked. He wasn't there anymore, but his car was. That's when I spotted some big rocks nearby. I didn't even think twice. I picked up one of the rocks and hurled it through the front windshield. The sound of glass shattering was satisfying, but I didn't stop there. I moved to the side windows, the back window, every single one of them. In my mind, if he was calling another girl for help, she could pay for his car repairs. When I was done, I stood back for a moment, breathing heavily. Part of me felt justified. I wasn't going to be played with. But another part of me knew this wasn't over. That night, as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. Sure, he had disrespected me, but the way I reacted wasn't who I wanted to be. I told myself I was done with him. I didn't want anything to do with P anymore. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. He wasn't someone who would just walk away, and I wasn't ready for what was coming next. Because with P, there was always more to the story. After Thanksgiving, I decided I was done with P. The chaos surrounding him wasn't worth it, and being with him had brought out a side of me I didn't like. I was too good for this mess. I distanced myself, ignored his calls, and tried to cut off all contact. But it wasn't that easy. Meanwhile, P was begging and pleading for me to see him, to talk to him, to reconsider. How could you beg me for a relationship while having another woman in your life? I asked him during one of his desperate phone calls. He didn't have an answer, just apologies and excuses. Time passed and I stayed away. But one day, P asked me to come to his mom's birthday dinner. "We can just go as friends," he said. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. I wasn't doing it for him, I was doing it for his mom. She and I had always gotten along, and I didn't see why I should let our connection go because of his foolishness. The night of the dinner, everything seemed fine at first. When we got to the restaurant, I greeted his mom and other family members warmly. Then I saw her. Sitting at the table was his ex. His mom introduced her casually, saying she was more of a family friend, but I wasn't naive. I could tell P hadn't expected her to be there, either. He was visibly irritated and pulled his mom aside to speak with her. I didn't let it bother me. I wasn't threatened by her presence. She was beautiful, and I could see he had a type, but I wasn't going to let the situation ruin my night. I sat on the same side of the table as her so P could sit across from her. I enjoyed myself, sipping drinks, eating good food, and holding polite conversations with his family. As the dinner wrapped up, I hugged his mom and grandma goodbye and left the restaurant with P. As soon as we got to the car, my phone buzzed. It was a message. "Tell him when I see him, I'm fucking him up." I sighed and showed the message to P.
"Handle it now," I said.
I'm not about to go back and forth with this girl. He looked at the message and stayed quiet. I wasn't surprised. Somehow, she'd found out I was with him. She had stalked my Instagram story, screenshot it, and sent it to me as proof. That's why we will never be together, I told him as he dropped me off at home. He left, presumably to deal with her, and I hoped that was the end of it. After showering and changing into something comfortable, I tried to relax. But then my phone started ringing. It was her, the girl Monique, call after call, nonstop. I couldn't believe she was going crazy about him being with me after we just left dinner, where his ex was literally at. I was mind blown that his ex had more sense than her, and we were face to face. I finally picked up, tired of the harassment. "You're next, bitch," she said venomously before hanging up. I sat there in disbelief, wondering how I ended up in this mess. I wasn't even his girlfriend. Why was I dealing with the consequences of his lies? Before I could process, there was a knock at my window.
P.
I opened the door, irritated. But when I saw him, I froze. He was bleeding, his shirt ripped, his face cut up. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing. "This the type of shit you like?" I said, shaking my head. "Women cutting you up, huh?" He sat down, holding his side, looking embarrassed. "Oh, this what she meant when she said I was next?"
Huh?
I'm not sure what makes her think she will ever get that close to me because I wasn't fighting over a man. I grabbed some supplies and helped clean him up, but the entire time I was disgusted. This wasn't love. This wasn't even friendship. This was chaos, and I didn't want any part of it. That night, as he sat in my living room battered and bruised, I realized how low this situation had brought me, and I vowed to climb back out. After that night, when P showed up unannounced, bleeding from his girl rage, I knew I was done. He pleaded for another chance, swore up and down that he was finished with her, and tried to convince me that he'd change. But I wasn't hearing it. He'd already shown me who he was, and frankly, I didn't owe him anything. Not my loyalty, not my time, and definitely not my peace. I began to heal, slowly putting myself back together. I focused on work, my kids, and the life I was building. I even got a promotion, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was at peace. P became a distant memory, just a cautionary tale I'd tucked away in my mind. One day, as I was cleaning and organizing for my son's upcoming birthday, I stumbled upon some things that belonged to him. Seeing his stuff felt like coming face to face with regret. I didn't believe in throwing people's things away, so I decided to text him and let him know I'd dropped them off at his mom's house. He agreed, and I made the drop-off discreetly. Days later, it was finally my son's birthday. The house was full of energy as we prepared to celebrate. Their dad had come over, and we were all getting ready to head out. The kids were excited, the vibe was light, and everything felt good. That was until there was a knock at the door. At first, I brushed it off, assuming someone else would answer. But the kids were the ones to alert me. My gut churned as I walked to the door, already suspecting who it might be. Sure enough, when I opened it, P stood there, staring me dead in the eyes. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and immediately asked what he was doing there. He started in on how he couldn't reach me, oblivious to the fact that I'd changed my number for that exact reason. I wasn't trying to hear him. My kid's father was in the house, and I wasn't about to let this turn into something ugly. Sensing I wasn't about to entertain him, P acted like he was leaving. I went back inside to finish gathering everyone, thinking the ordeal was over. We loaded up the cars, my cousin riding with me while the kids went with their dad. As we pulled out, I noticed a car trailing us. At first, I ignored it, but the closer it got, the more obvious it became. My cousin suddenly yelled, "That's P." My heart sank. What was he thinking? Was he really chasing me? And in broad daylight? Frustrated, I kept driving, but he wouldn't let up. I tried everything, speeding up, slowing down, but he stayed on my tail. It wasn't until I finally pulled over that he swerved up beside me, his face twisted with anger. "Why won't you just talk to me?" he shouted through his window. I glanced at the car he was driving and noticed something off. The license plate was bedazzled, the steering wheel cover sparkly, a dead giveaway that it wasn't his car. "Are you really chasing me in another woman's car?" I yelled back, disgusted. With absolutely no shame, he shouted. "Yes, and so what? I'm trying to talk to you." I was done. Without another word, I put my car in drive and sped off. I thought I'd lost him, but he was relentless. He stayed close, weaving through traffic just to stay on me. My cousin and I sat in tense silence as I tried to think. Then an idea struck me. When we hit a red light, I slammed a U-turn right in the middle of the intersection and gunned it toward the expressway. He hesitated just long enough for me to lose him. The entire ordeal left me shaken, but also clear about one thing. I was too good for this. He had brought out the worst in me, and I wasn't willing to let anyone else drag me back down. I drove on, the road ahead of me wide open, determined to leave P and everything he represented far behind. After that ridiculous car chase in someone else's car, I was done. Completely done. I remember thinking this man is either going to end up back in jail or dead. That night was the final straw, and I made up my mind to never let him or his chaos near my life again. Days went by, and for once, I didn't hear from him. The silence was peaceful. No texts, no calls, no drama. I felt like I could finally breathe. Maybe, just maybe, he had gotten the message that I wanted nothing to do with him. As my birthday approached, I started focusing on myself again. I was ready to celebrate with the people who actually mattered. Then, out of nowhere...
Dang, D is really spilling the tea. I can't wait for part 2. I need to know what happens next.